I've cut myself a nice piece of book cloth. Remember, book cloth has a grain as well. It's a vertical one, always goes with the roll. It doesn't matter technically too much, but you very often get quite a strong line pattern on the outside, so it's as well to keep to that. It looks a bit odd if it's going across the book. I've cut it not too big. I don't want an enormous amount of extra cloth because you've just got to glue more, so I just want it to wrap around the book. I've got quite enough there. Roughly an inch all the way, 3 centimetres all the way around. It doesn't have to be cut absolutely square and straight, but if it is straight it looks nice underneath the end paper. It doesn't really show very much, but you can just see the outline. So that's where it's going to be, and I'm just going to wrap it around again so I can mark where I'm going to put the boards. And now I'm just going to make a pencil mark on the inside of each end of the bottom boards. It's slipped. Some people will measure quite carefully and will work out exactly where to go. I prefer not to. I find I tend to get the measurements wrong, and in any case book cloth very often stretches, so if you find that you've glued out and you've done it to a particular measurement and it's stretched, then it's going to be wrong. So I tend to do it just on the book. So I'm going to glue the first half. You can glue the whole lot, but it's a bit daunting to really have to do everything at once, and it tends to dry, so I'm going to do just over half at a time. There are my pencil marks. You probably can't see them very well, but there they are. And I'm going to glue to just beyond that. I always also go right to the edge of the book cloth. It's a bit you don't want to limit yourself to the middle bit where the board is going to be. You want to go beyond it. It doesn't matter about going to the very edge, but if you don't go at least roughly to the edge, it means that the cloth will stretch where you've glued and it won't stretch where you haven't. So although I'm not going to worry about every tiny bit, I am going to go up to the edge and just a little bit beyond the centre. So that's my first side, and I'm going to put the board down on those marks, and that's now firmly down, that won't move. So I'm going to put the book on the boards where it wants to be, the shoulder resting on the board, with the board sitting comfortably in it and all the squares right. You can line one end up and do it that way, but I prefer to do it with the book in the right place where it wants to be. Second board goes on top, and that wants to be in exactly the right place. Squares even, corner to corner, make sure it's right. Now hold it with your right hand, or sorry, you've got to do it with your left hand if you're right-handed. Hold it firmly and glue out the other half. I've got plenty of waste paper while I'm doing this. You need several layers of waste paper so that you can get rid of the top one or two. I've actually got two pieces over each other because it's a rather wide piece of cloth. And again, I'm going thoroughly. You can stipple if you want to like that, but I find that it takes rather a long time, and it means that the first bit of glue tends to dry by the time you get back to it. Make sure your board hasn't shifted. If it has, put it back again. Just make sure your corners are easy. Hold your fingers to the foredge here and put your thumb on the board on top. Make sure it's not slipped. It wants to be comfortably in the shoulder, not sort of sitting on it. So quite comfortably, fingers firmly on it, and lay your spine strip, which is just a piece of book cloth, the exact width of the spine and the length of the boards, and just lay it in. We're going to move it in a moment, and bring the cloth quite firmly over the top so that it sticks to the board, and as soon as it sticks you can cover it, you can firm it down. I'm going to lift the book up now and quickly take out the spine strip and just check for squareness, and I can see it's not quite square, so I'm going to take that off quickly and reposition it where it wanted to be, just like that. and I'm just going to check with a ruler across that it is absolutely square, which it is. I'm now going to lay the spine strip in the middle. Gosh, that's not right. So I've taken out my spine strip and I'm going to position it exactly in the middle between the boards. So that's in place now. That's just to stop the cloth sticking to the back. I'm now going to move this round and cut the corners. And I think you can probably see from that, I'd normally hold it over the edge of the bench, and I won't move the camera at the moment, but if you hold the cloth by the corner over the edge of the bench and just cut off 45 degrees with leaving enough to cover the board, it's about just over 1/8 of an inch. Put your corner down, glue side down, otherwise you'll find you're picking up triangles. So I'm just going to cut the other 4 off in the same way. So there are the corners cut, and I'm just going to move the... I've moved my waste paper, got rid of all the bits, and I'm now going to glue the top edge. Not too much, you don't ever want to over glue, keep your glue absolutely minimal, otherwise you'll find that you've got just too much oozing out. And here it's quite a tough bit of cloth, so you can just pull it over if you like, or you can use the waste paper to pull it over. Make sure it's absolutely firm over the board edge and you haven't got air bubbles. If you just put it over, you'll find that you get air bubbles, and don't rub too hard on the cloth. If you want to rub it down really hard, go through the paper and make sure that you're working the bone folder into the bits down beside the board edge. So that's the top corner, top end. Turn it round and we'll do the other end. We want to do the long edges first because they're the bits over the bottom. And the glue needs to be in that bit by the board edge, not on the edges. The edges don't matter too much really. It's those edges that do. So I'm going to pull that over again using the paper, working it down really firmly over the edges. And you can see that it's not absolutely level there, but I can trim that later on. So now, having done those edges, I think I'm actually going to trim a bit of this off. There's rather more than I want there, so I'm just going to take those off with a pair of scissors. Again, you don't really want to be wasting glue. There's just no need to have too much glue here. So make sure you get into the corners there, so they need to stick down. Turn it round and give a little push in and a little push down. I'll hold it up to show you the position. Your fingers want to be pushing slightly in and slightly down on both ends of the board, and then you can bring the book cloth over, and then you get a nice tidy edge, which should look like that. If you don't do that, you'll find you've got a point sticking out at the end, and that doesn't look very nice. So I'll do the same on the other end, other side rather, and again, not too much glue, but what glue there is down beside the board, not anywhere else. Small push in, slightly in and slightly down, so that your corners go over the board edge, and then you get a nice tidy corner on the edge there. And there is your case, which looks okay, all ready to be checked on the book. The book's here. Lay your book in position and make sure that it fits. Sometimes if you've got an older book particularly, or a slightly irregular one, you may find it fits better one way than the other, but I think that looks fine. Before casing in, I'm just going to make sure that I've got everything tidy here. I've already trimmed one side. I like to have my mull at right angles at 45 degrees, but you can just leave it if you want to. And I've just trimmed the tapes at a slight angle. That doesn't honestly matter very much, but whatever you do, you want to be consistent if possible. So I'm just going to take each one of those down to the same as each other. So there is the mull, and I think everything else is okay. And I'm just going to check for fit again, make sure that those are all the corners are right, and yes, I think that's quite nice. I have given this a bit of a press. You don't absolutely have to, but if you can, it probably helps a little bit. But you can just go ahead and go straight into casing in. So I'm going to find a piece of waste paper which is clean, and I'm just going to cut it in half, tear it in half, and slip it underneath the end paper, the first end paper, so it will protect the book from any accidental glue getting down onto the page edges. A bit of glue underneath each tape, just to hold them down. And now a bit of glue. Ignore the mull will look after itself. As long as you've got enough glue here, the glue will just go through the mull, and it will find its own level. You can stick it down if you want to, but I don't really bother. You just want to make sure you've got the glue evenly spaced. Most problems with end papers come from the glue being unevenly spread, and so you just need to make sure that everything is level, and you need to make sure that everything is even and that you've got the glue spread evenly over the whole of the end paper. So I think that's all right. I'm just making sure there's enough on the top of the tapes. You'll see there's a bit of a curl on the end paper. That's because of the moisture. Don't worry, that will be fine. Just don't let it curl under, otherwise you'll find you've got into difficulties. So I'm going to lift the end paper up and take the paper away. Don't just yank it out, or you'll find that you'll get glue on the underside. So I'm just going to check again that it's in the right place, that all the squares are even. Fingers go on the forage, holding it firmly so it can't slip forward, and your thumb on the top, again absolutely firmly. If you don't do that, the whole thing is likely to slip forward and out of its case. Bring the book cover over, don't flip it over, bring it firmly down and make sure that it sits in the shoulder, and drop it down onto the book. And don't open it, but if you look round, if you open up the cover you haven't yet put on, you can see very easily that your paper is exactly in the right place. If it's not, you've just got time to whip it up and to do another end paper and to start again, but ideally you don't do that. So the second edge is easier because you know it's not going to move, because that is the main problem with this. And I'm going to do the same thing again, just put the glue under the tapes, and then glue evenly again over the whole of the end paper. As I said before, don't over glue. You don't want more than you need. All you need is just to hold everything together, and excess glue tends to get in all the wrong places, so just keep it as minimal as possible. You note that the glue brush is a fairly stiff brush. It's not a floppy one like the paste brush. You need that stiffness really for the glue, otherwise it's difficult to apply. So that's that. Spread evenly. Lift the end paper, take the waste paper out, and bring the cover firmly over into the shoulder and down. And again, looking at it from the edge, that looks fine. And I'm now going to put some release paper in between the two, but inside the covers, and give it a quick press. I've got my release paper here. If you don't have any, it's quite expensive stuff to buy, but if you know somebody who does mail-outs, label backing is excellent. This is a piece of A4 label backing, and just slip it into the book. Don't open the cover at this stage. Slip it in between the end paper and the cover and get it right to the edge. Turn over and do the same on the other side. The other good source of release paper is library film. If you know somebody who works in a library, that's a good source of it. So a nice clean pressing board, and put the book on it with the board edge to the board edge of the pressing board, so that you don't crush the spine. You've got this nice curve here, and you don't want to shove the book into the middle like that, because it'll just crush that curve. So get the book absolutely on the edge and put your second board on, it's clean too, on like that. And I'm going to give this a quick nip in the nipping press. If you haven't got one, just put a very heavy weight on the top and that will do absolutely fine.